I'm at a place where if God is not in it, I don't want it. God is so intentional about me, it makes me want to be intentional about me. When I speak about God being intentional, what I mean is that God created you on purpose for a purpose. God is intentional about you. You weren't born or created by mistake. For the Bible says in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." I want you to remember that verse the next time you experience a season in your life of uncertainty, a season of fear, a season of complete frustration and disappointment, a season of rejection, a season of heartbreak, a season of complete loss, a season of pruning, where God is ultimately developing your character, your faith, and your perseverance for what he has coming for you. Season of depression and sadness, a season of failure, a season of doubt, a season of betrayal. If you're currently experiencing any of those seasons right now, I want you to recite that verse, and not only recite it, but put it in your heart and truly believe it. God says, "For I know the plans I have for you." Those plans are not to cause you harm. Those plans are not for evil, Those plans are to prosper you, to give you hope and a future. I know so many of us are in a season of uncertainty, right? You're in a season of uncertainty of knowing where the trajectory of your life is headed. You're in a season of not knowing if the relationships in your life are right for you. If the people that say they love you really mean it. If the people that say they support you and they got your back really mean it. So many of us are living in a season of fear. A season of fear of not knowing what the next steps look like if we do the thing that God has called us to do. We feel as though we aren't qualified to do the thing that God has called us to do. We feel that we don't have what it takes to do the thing that God has called us to do. I'm here to remind you that God is intentional about you. I'm here to remind you that you don't have to have it all figured out. I'm here to remind you to put your trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. Because the thing about it is that when we lean on our own understanding, we get into this cycle of thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not loved. I'm not appreciated. I'm not smart enough. I'm not intelligent enough. I don't have enough money. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I don't look the part. I'm not talented enough. I'm not strong enough to do this, God. But God, what if I fail? This is what happens when we lean on our own understanding. This is what happens when we rely on ourselves as the source of our own strength instead of relying on God to be the source of our strength. I'm going to tell you something. I would not be where I am today if I was not fully relying on God and God alone. Because when I tell you that this season of my life is full of uncertainty. If you know my story, I'm sharing my story on how I, transitioned out of my FBI career as an FBI special agent to full-time entrepreneurship. And I left earlier this year in February of 2023, and it is now September. So I've been gone for a total of 7 months. And when I tell you this is not easy, this is not a cakewalk, I don't have it all figured out. I didn't have it all figured out when I left the job. But what I did know, without a doubt, is that God needed me to fully walk in the purpose that He created for me. You understand? God was waiting for me to say yes to the call. I was at a point when I was at my job where I was holding on to what was familiar. I was holding on to what was comfortable. I knew that I was going to be getting X amount of dollars every 2 weeks deposited into my bank account. I knew that I had health insurance, life insurance, all the things that come with having a career, right? I was secure. I was secure in that. But I was also comfortable to the point where I began to feel stuck. You know how you can be so comfortable that you just feel stuck. We get comfortable with being unhappy. We get comfortable with being treated less than we deserve. We get comfortable with not being appreciated for the work that we do. We get comfortable with being available to everyone at any time they need us. We get comfortable with the routine of going day to day, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. But you know, the thing about being comfortable is a trick of the enemy. Because in order to get to where God has called you to go, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable, period. Because it's something about being uncomfortable that makes you fully rely on God. Being comfortable means that you got it. You got it figured out. You can do this. You go to that job every day. You know what you're doing, right? It's the same, situation that you've been dealing with when it comes to your relationships, your family, your friends, your significant other. But in the moment that you decide to get uncomfortable, that's when you fully trust in God. The day that I left the FBI was one of the most frightening things I've ever done in my life. Because I knew I was walking away from so much. I was giving up so much that I had accomplished, that I worked hard for. So to leave that, to say, yes, God, I'll trust you. Yes, God, I'll do the thing you call me to do, even though I don't know if I'm fully ready to do the thing you call me to do. Yes, God, I'm gonna walk away from everything that I know, everything that I worked hard for, to do the things you call me to do and to bring you glory. Your obedience to do what God has called you to do will change so many lives. When you really sit and you understand that there are so many people that are attached to your obedience for generations, y'all. Your obedience can heal generations. I think about my parents, and I spoke about how they uprooted us and they moved us to Richmond, Virginia when we were younger. And in order for them to do that, they had to be okay with being uncomfortable. They didn't do it because they had all the money. They didn't do it because they knew how everything was going to turn out. They didn't do it because they were guaranteed a great life by stepping out on faith. Because of their obedience to move us to a city that gave us greater opportunities, because they stepped outside of their comfort zone. They were born and raised in South Carolina. But when they decided to say, you know what, we're gonna move. We're gonna seek better opportunities for our family. The moment they decided to do that, they broke generational curses that could have continued through the lineage of our family. And because we witnessed our parents do that thing, it instilled in me to do what God has called me to do. Because I see the fruitfulness and the harvest of them taking that step to leave what was familiar and what was comfortable. I'm in a season of my life right now where I just want to do what God has called me to do. It's not about the money for me. It's not about the money for me. It's about the peace for me. How many of you are holding on to a title, a certain level of status, a certain level of privilege, and yet you're not at peace? And you know what's sad and also scary is that we're living in a time where people are so focused on manifesting the life that they desire and that they believe that they should have, rather than going to God, seeking God, and seeing if that's even the life that He desires for them. You know, my life verse is Psalm 37:4. And it says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I remember when I first heard that verse years ago. This was back in college. And I completely misinterpreted what that text meant. I took it as, oh, God's going to give me everything I desire, everything my heart desires, if I basically just believe in him. That's how I interpreted it when I first heard it. But the correct interpretation of that verse is that when we delight ourselves in the Lord, which means to honor him, to seek him, to be intentional in spending time with him, to build an intimate relationship with him, right? To spend quality time with him. When we do those things, God will give us the desires of our heart. Our heart's desires will be given by God, and they will be in alignment with what he has called us to do, which takes away the whole idea of manifesting what you believe you deserve. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. When you go to God, you speak life. You speak life about what you believe God has for you. But what I'm saying is when you go outside of God's will, when you go outside of seeking God for your future or about something that you desire, that's when it becomes dangerous for your life. When you're manifesting in your own strength, you aren't manifesting in the sense of like, God, I believe you're going to do this thing for me. God, I believe, God, if this is what you desire from me, Lord, show me, speak to me. I'm listening to you, God. I want to hear you. What manifestation looks like for the current age that we're living in is reciting different sayings. And God ain't nowhere in that. It's you basically saying, I deserve, I will have, I will be. It's all about I. And it's not about, God, what will you have me to do? God, what do you desire for me to do? God, how can my life bring you glory? How can my heart's desire align with your will so that you will be able to get glory out of what I do? You start manifesting all of these things and these people into your life, and then you wonder why you're confused and you don't know which way to go and you can't figure it out because you're seeking yourself as the source of the direction that you should go. You're seeking you. You aren't seeking God. Hear me. What you do in this life has nothing to do with you, but everything to do with God and what God has for his kingdom. It's not about you. It's not about you. Sis, it's not about you. Bro, it is not about you. And when you understand that it's not about you, you will humble yourself and you will fall to your knees and you will seek God about what it is he has for you to do. Because then you will understand that it's so much bigger than you. It's so much bigger than you. What God has for you to do, you won't even be able to do it by yourself. You're going to need a team of people, a team of believers. And understand this, everybody out here will not give you a round of applause for seeking what God has called you to do, for going after what God has called you to do. The reality is that God gave you the vision. God did not give them your vision. So the next time you get frustrated or upset or disappointed or hurt because someone that you shared your vision with doesn't give you the reaction that you were looking for, do it anyway. Because if you begin to seek the approval of man, let me tell you, you're going to be so disappointed. And that's with all things in life, relationships, support. If you're seeking the approval for men to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, that's a great idea, you're going to be disappointed. And then you need to check yourself, because who are you really doing it for? I'm going to tell you something. I'm at a place where if God is not in it, I don't want it. If God is not in it, I don't want it. God is so intentional about me. It makes me want to be intentional about me. I am not on this earth to please man. That's Galatians 1:10. And it reads, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. So who are you doing it for? Ask yourself, who is it for? Because if you're doing it for people, you will be so disappointed that you will feel like you're never going to be good enough to get the approval that you are hoping for. It will cause you to remain stagnant because you will start to base your movement off of how people respond to you and what you're doing. So if they aren't giving you the round of applause that you believe you should be getting, or if they aren't telling you that you're doing a great job, or if they aren't constantly giving you the instant gratification of, oh my gosh, you're doing so great, you're doing this, you're doing that, you will crumble. Because on this journey of whatever God has called you to do, you're going to find that a lot of the round of applause will come from yourself. Of you saying, you know what? I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know God is going to get the glory out of my life. So good on me for sticking to the calling, even though I'm not seeing the results that I hope for. Even though it's not where I hope it will be at this point. Even though people aren't showing up for me the way that I had hoped they would, or thought they would, or believed they would. Allow God's intentionality about your life to propel you into greatness. Just know that no one can do what you were designed to do by God. So regardless of who we see out here that's already doing the thing or things that we desire to do, that has nothing to do with what God is going to do for you. Don't allow someone else's journey to distract you from where God is taking you. Don't allow someone else's journey to discourage you and make you feel like you can't do it because they did it. Don't allow someone else's journey to make you envious of where they are and where you are. God has a plan for your life, just as he has a plan for their life. And you can't get caught up in like, well, God, you doing all this over there. What about me? You don't know what that person had to go through behind closed doors. You don't know their story. And if they are willing to share their story and they do talk about the obstacles that they had to overcome, use it as your motivation to keep going, to keep building, to keep believing, right? Claim it. Speak life over your situation and your circumstances. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So watch what you say, because what you say could very well become what you will be and what your situation will look like. Honor your life and honor what God is calling you to do. God is intentional about you. And because God is intentional about you, you need to be intentional about you, because it is that deep. I appreciate y'all for watching my video. If you found it helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it, drop a comment. And I hope you will join me in my next video. Make sure you subscribe